Hey guys, I wanted to make a casual review on Lies of P. Personally, I really enjoyed the game and it was overall fun and challenging. I would say that this was an overall great game. Generally, I tend to make like a ranking for the games, or not ranking, but like a score. I kind of wanted to stop doing that just because I feel like I don't know how to score. I feel like it's becoming slowly very convoluted how I scored them, and I really don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna say stuff like, oh, it was nice, it was perfect, it was a great game, it was amazing. Or if I didn't like it, I don't ever want to play a game from this developer ever again, or something like that. I don't know, something simple, something that doesn't mean that I have to compare it to other games or whatever. But anyways, starting with the negatives, personally, I found the normal enemies to be a slog after a while. Some of their movesets were a little annoying to deal with, and a lot of them were simply not that interesting. As the game went on, less and less of the enemies had interesting designs. The puppets were fun design-wise, I really liked them, but the carcasses were just kind of blue blobs. None of them were very memorable. And then the humans were just a bunch of really weirdly dressed enemies. I don't know, they just looked kind of weird. The environment also lost my interest as the game went on, as it became very colorless and dull. Well, I think colorless environments can be fun. This game just made it look all very samey and grimy at times, which grimy colorlessness is my least favorite type of dull environment. By the end of the game, I was just kind of zoned out with a lot of these zones. On with the positives, I'm a big fan of parrying in games, so naturally I like the parrying in this game. I will say dodging feels a lot more satisfying than parrying, but the weapon break feature makes it worth it. A feature that this game adds that is an improvement in the Souls-like genre is the ability to regen one pulse cell when you run out, as it gives the player a fighting chance even when things get bad. So I feel like a lot of times when you run out, it's kind of like, oh, you either quote-unquote clutch or whatever, or you're done for, you know? But this kind of gives you the ability to sort of fight back, even if it's looking bad. The ability to mix and match weapon parts is also very neat, but that alongside the weapon abilities and the Legion arm were things that I just never really touched. While this does give the players more tools, I just forgot to use them. It never occurred to me in the middle of combat that, oh, I should use my Legion arm, I should use my abilities. I don't know, I just forget. And yes, I'm not big on hero shooters, how could you tell? That being said, the weapons were overall interesting and fun to use, and the durability system, while not my favorite, at least worked well in this game. Aesthetically, I liked the game. The first few environments were alright. It was mainly industrial areas, as well as a church and a museum, which were cool. I like the puppet designs. Technology is one of my favorite aesthetics. I just like robots, anything mechanical really. I think it always looks really cool. The bosses all looked really cool, and they were all fun to fight. Some of the bosses actually provided a challenge and had me on my toes, which was a very enjoyable experience. I think when a boss actually pushes you to actually do better, it's good boss design. If they're just annoying and they have like attacks that are just a nuisance to deal with, then it's just dumb. It's not a challenge, it's just dumb. But a lot of the vast majority of the bosses were challenging, so I like that. The last three bosses in particular were amazing. Luxasia is probably the toughest boss in the game, which while super difficult, is actually just a difficult good boss. It's not dumb difficult, if that makes sense, which was crazy. It was a crazy fight and I really liked that. Manus was the most cinematic, so even though the boss itself wasn't that amazing, the actual visual appeal of the boss fight was very cool. And the Nameless Puppet was a fun conclusion to the narrative, just considering the story and Geppetto, and, well, the Nameless Puppet is Geppetto's son, his son's corpse, so it was kind of cool. The story was also just enjoyable. I wanted to know more about the lore, what would happen with the characters. I actually found myself caring for the characters and wanting to hear what they had to say. I found Venini to be an interesting character, as he had a lot to say on why everything was happening, and while he was a little eccentric and a little, well, he wasn't full of himself, it was just more his character that he was full of himself. He was a fun character. There were a lot of interesting tidbits in the collectibles, which give a lot of background to the events taking place. A lot of the stories in these were also very interesting to track along the way, such as the story of Medoro, the reporter. Since you hear a lot about him from dialogue or a lot of these collectibles, but you never meet him. So it's very interesting to listen and read about his story, stuff that happens, who he knows, etc. For the main story, I like seeing more and more things revealed. You go in not really understanding what's going on, but slowly you start to understand such things such as how Urgo comes from humans, how some of the important puppets are really people you might know. Basically, every single puppet, or not every single puppet, but puppets that awaken have the personality of their previous life in a way. And so finding stuff out on what certain puppets were like before and how that affects their personality now was very interesting. And ultimately also how the story ends up connecting to Geppetto and what he's done. Personally, I would have wished for the game to focus more on the puppets than the alchemists, or at least the whole experimentation part of the alchemists. Leave that more for like the background lore rather than, you know, the carcasses and actually fighting the alchemists. When involving the carcasses, having them be more involved in a combination sort of form. We did get a few of those where some of the puppets had like tentacles and stuff like that, which was really cool, but the carcasses all by themselves were just completely unmemorable. I didn't like them. I also would have preferred a dodge roll rather than a sidestep into a roll, but it was an okay mechanic. I kind of like the sidestep. I think it's very accurate and cool, but I don't really like that you kind of have the dodge roll, but you don't have it as its own solo mechanic, which I don't know. I didn't like that. I did not play the DLC, as I'll admit. I kind of became burnt out by the end, but overall the main game was enjoyable. On some parts the game might be a bit much for like a beginner to this kind of genre, like Luxasia for instance. I don't know if a lot of people might be able to get good in time when you meet her. She's quite the jump compared to other bosses, but I would seriously recommend this game if you're interested in this genre. It was a really good game. Again, some parts a little bit of a slog to get through, but overall a great game. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to my absolute mess of a review, and goodbye.